What is going on, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of Wildly Informed. Brett Marshall, Isha Jerome back with another episode. We'll do a little bit of a trade deadline recap today, talk a little wild news, and mix on some other good conversations in between. But before we do all that, got to check on Isha. How's it going tonight, my friend?
Good. A way crazier trade deadline day than I predicted, given how busy the week was leading up to it. And I have to say, Hawk from Home's also in this chat. I had to apologize to Hawk from Home because on one of my streams over the weekend, or I guess the Thursday in the morning, asking me, "Are you going to be watching, trade deadline? Are you going to have all the notifications on?" I was like, "Hawk, nothing's going to happen today. Everything's already happened. No one gives a fuck about trade deadline day anymore. It's not like free agent frenzy. All the moves happen," and I couldn't be more wrong. So sorry again, Hawk from Home.
Yeah, I was at the state tournament while it was going on. It's obviously I was getting the updates coming through, but it wasn't until I kind of one of the outlines today. It's oh crap, actually a lot of players got moved on deadline day, in addition to all the ones that happened before that we've already talked about.
I was up streaming Muay Thai at 5 a.m. and just buzzing after buzzing after buzzing, dude, with notifications, and yeah, it was wild. What's up, Andrew? Good to see you. But yeah, so big show here today. Going over trade deadline. What else do we got?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit about the Wild's second pair. We'll talk a little bit about overtime rules, the Wild's deadline moves, a couple other things we've just seen kind of floating around Twitter, and might be a little bit shorter show today, but it'll still be a good one. Definitely worth listening, tuning in. Appreciate everyone that's jumped into the chat already.
Hell yeah. Well, let's get right into it. Where do you want to start?
Yeah, we'll start here. Hockey headlines. So picking up where we were just talking about the other kind of notable trade deadline deals. I didn't do all of them, just the ones I felt were actually kind of worth discussing a little bit. So the biggest one, obviously, we talked a little bit about this, I think, last week. Mikko Rantanen does, in fact, get traded to the Dallas Stars, continue to build out their Finnish empire there with Rupe Hintz, Miro Heiskanen, and I'm pretty sure they have a bunch of other ones too. And then immediately signs an $8 million $12 million extension. Carolina gets back in the deal Logan Stankoven and a pair first, and I think a conditional third or something as well.
2/3.
Yeah, 2/3. Yeah, they'll get the full trade there. So yeah, I mean, I think if you're Carolina, there was a really good quote. I wish I would have thrown it in here from the GM Eric Tulsky, basically just saying as a GM, my job is to take chances, and sometimes it's not going to work out. And it was something on the lines of we had the opportunity to go get a really good player and just didn't work out, but we still got, a really good young player in Logan Stankoven who feels like he's
going to be so sick.
Which I love that he's part of that package because he's one of my favorite players.
Stand happy he's not on Dallas anymore.
Yeah, not to cheer for him on Dallas anymore. And Carolina's probably along with the Kings, probably my top three favorite teams. They're probably my favorite team behind the Wild. So much easier player to root for now that he's not on a division rival. And, they get a couple of first round picks that, now they can either use those picks, draft more, first round talent, or, in the summer when the cap opens up, they can potentially use those two first to bring in somebody else. So I think given the situation, I think the Carolina Hurricanes really well. And then obviously Dallas goes all in, but as they should, they have a team that's, as the Wild have seen throughout the playoffs here in recent years, they're a team built for the playoffs. They're a good team. And, as we'll talk about here in a second, the division did not hold back in upgrading, and they got the biggest fish of the deadline. Yeah. So I think overall, pretty even for both sides.
Yeah, no, for sure. I loved the return, and I guess the Avs are the only ones who kind of are just sad right now. Although they did all right. They did all right that day as well.
Yeah, the interesting piece is I think if you're saying the income tax doesn't matter, I don't know how you can see this Rantanen thing and think otherwise. I think it was said, this wasn't a money thing allegedly, but I think the Avs offered him a 12.5 by 8. The Hurricanes, I think, went as high as $14 million.
Yeah.
And then he takes the least of that in Dallas. It seems weird, but how much, he's taking the most home in Texas. So it'll continue to be denied that income tax doesn't matter, but I think it does. And in this case, I think it maybe wasn't the only reason. Obviously he wants to go play for a good team. Dallas is a good team, but I think you have to think that part of that factors in, maybe alongside wanting to go play, alongside some other countrymen too. But that was an interesting wrinkle to me, as reportedly the AAVs he was offered. I guess there's no proof anywhere, but yeah, we can just kind of move down to your list here. The next one, this one I thought was really funny. This Jake Wallman one for the Oilers. I think Wallman's a good player, but the funny part is that Detroit did not think this over the summer and shipped him off to San Jose with a second-round pick, not 4, with 1, to basically dump his cap. And then San Jose was like, thank you, we will take 60 games of him and then turn him into a prospect and a conditional first-round pick. Like, just masterful asset management by the Sharks to, like, get a player for free plus a second and then turn around said player to another prospect and a first-round pick. Like, basically got a free first and second-round pick for 60 games, holding on to a guy for 60 games. And it's like, and I don't think his cap, it was, like, unreasonable. It was, like, $4 million or something, like, pretty manageable.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's tough, I guess, if you're on Edmonton, but...
Yeah, I mean, like, he's still a good player. Like, I think he was way undervalued by Detroit. It's
weird. I don't know what, like, Detroit, they seem like they have, like, a certain mold of what they're looking for right now. and if they don't like what they got, then it's like, all right, we'll move on.
Yeah, seriously. The Yzer plan is still doesn't look fully fleshed out.
I don't even know
yet,
what the hell the plan is anymore.
Yeah.
The plan is ever evolving. Yeah. For those who watch boxing, the Shannon plan, or not the Shannon plan. The Shannon plan happened. It didn't work out. The Yzerman's plan. It's kind of like Riyadh's season. It just never ends. It just never ends.
Yeah. Next one down there that's worth noting. I think staying inside the Central Division here. The Avalanche. They had a busy deadline. Picked up Brock Nelson, pretty decent prospect. I believe William Defoe is how you say his name. Shipped out some big pieces in the process. Yeah. Caleb Ritchie, who I believe was probably considered their best prospect. I think in Scott Wheeler's ranking, he was ranked like right alongside like Urov. It's like written like the top 20 currently in the NHL, like prospects league wide. They also give up a first round pick in 2026, a conditional third. Oliver Shillington, who I think was subsequently flipped somewhere else, I want to say as well down the road. And then they also went out, acquired Eric Johnson, and also made a big deal with the Bruins, acquiring Charlie Coyle in a trade that involved Casey Middlestat going back to the Bruins as well. So the Avs going all in, they go from Middlestat and then not a lot of center depth, and now it's McKinnon, Nelson, and Coyle down the middle. A lot of ties to Minnesota there. But as we saw the Wild last night, still not too tall of a task to tackle if you play the right way. But that the Avs pretty much put it all on the line here. Like, I think that was a lot to pay for Brock Nelson. Like, I tweeted out the equivalent.
He looked good in the game. He looked good with them.
Though. Yeah, he looked fine. But like, unless he like plans to re-sign, which it's too early to say that as of now. But like, you're giving up a first and your best prospect, a third, Shillington. Like, the way I keep this up, like if you're just trying to figure out as a Wild fan what that cost looks like, you're probably looking at Declan Chisholm, Danila Urov, a first round pick, and a conditional third round.
Yeah, which is why the Wild didn't make those moves, which is fine because
which is what we talked about. We didn't want them to make.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and there's always going to be people on Twitter and honestly even in our community and in the media who are on trade deadline day going to be like, well, Billy Guerin didn't do anything. No big splash for a team that wants to make the playoffs. And it's like, guys, like, did you see what the cost was for these deadline legit acquisitions? The Wild don't have it. And well, I mean, they theoretically don't have it because the guys that you just mentioned they would have to move would be guys that we as a fan base do not want them to move on from.
Right.
I mean, look at everyone's freaking out over Marat, Khusnutdinov, myself included. Right. I drank myself to sleep the other night because of that. Shout out to
more on that later. But yeah, so I mean, I think it's teams that are in two different places, right? Like the Wild are a team that, they've been, as good as I expected this year. I think better than what many expected, but I still think and I think you've kind of heard it through the tea leaves with Guerin basically saying that the Wild's time is coming, meaning like our window it's cracked, I think at this point, but it's going to be 70 degrees at the start of next season where it's going to get flung open. And at that point, I think now you're going to add in free agency. You're going to maintain these picks and prospects so that next year when your window finally opens up, you have the opportunity to go out, use those picks on a deeper team, right? Than right now.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Other notable trades was the last one here out of the Central Division. I don't know what the order is that you have here, but the Jets, more minor league deal, or not AHL deal, but minor than relative to the other two teams. So they go out and get Brandon Tanev from the Kraken for a second round pick.
Dude, good move because he is a playoff type player and like one of the best third liners in the league.
Yeah, give him some bottom six depth, like a guy that likes to play physical. Like he's kind of like Ryan Hartman if Hartman wasn't a dumbass half the time. Like that's kind of how I see him.
Bro,
a little
he's
bit.
His brother, but a forward. Like straight up, if Chris Tanev was a forward, he'd play exactly like Brandon Tanev. If Brandon Tanev was a defenseman, he'd play exactly like Chris Tanev. Just get in front of shots, be an energy guy, and make sure the team doesn't score. Getting points doesn't matter to these guys, and that's why the teams love them. And I love how both the brothers were like late bloomers, right? Like they didn't play that much hockey growing up. Played like a small college. I don't even think I don't know if Brandon was drafted or not. Chris wasn't drafted. They just like he got invited to a camp, played minor league, got called up, and the rest is history.
Yeah, and I like this from Winnipeg's standpoint because I think you look at, I believe they're like first or second in the league right now, alongside Washington, and I think they're basically like, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of attitude here, right? Like they went and added a guy who's played in Winnipeg before, and then added a little beef to their blue line and Luke Shen, who's probably an upgrade over Logan Stanley. Like,
oh yeah, dude, Winnipeg is dangerous. Like they are, assuming their energy guys are healthy enough to throw the body around in the playoffs, like they're going to be the one to beat in this division.
Yeah, but I like that it. Yeah, I like they didn't look to just like blow it up, but they added strength in a couple areas. So if you're the Wild, it's tough to look at Dallas, Winnipeg, and Colorado kind of push all the chips in, but at the same time, the
this
Wild
isn't the Stanley Cup year. This isn't the year to push the chips in.
And if you want to look at this, the Wild's acquisitions are going to be Jules Eriksson, Kirill Kaprizov, and Jonas Brodin, who, as evident by the Wild not making any moves, seems that the belief is still that they will be back before the end of the regular season. So we'll still hold our breath on that, of course. But I think if that's how you have to look as a Wild fan is, they're getting their best players back, so they couldn't make a move, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. And to Hoptick's comment here, I mean, you've been saying this all year that like the point there, the underlying stats are there. It's just fluke, I guess you can call it. It just hasn't been rewarded. Whereas like now, coming off suspension, you can just see that like, okay, now the output is matching the analytics.
Yeah, and I think he's, like, to his point, I think he's drawn 5 minor penalties so far. I think 3 in the last 2 games. I think for
he's been awesome. He's been awesome.
I think for a couple of games he was their best forward. Like, the Wild haven't scored much, but the Wild are kind of winning his minutes when they're out there controlling the expected goals. I don't think he's been scored on a ton. The team hasn't been scored on a ton realistically, but yeah I think like he has come back and looked. It looks like he's playing like a player who's learned his lesson, but we still saw him. I think like second game back, he still was willing to drop the gloves, right? But like didn't go after with a cheap shot, like settled it within the rules. And I think like that was kind of what you're hoping for the Wild, 1, because we know the leash is short, but 2, if there is still plans to try to trade him this summer, that's the type of player teams are going to want to trade for. Is this like impact middle 6 forward that's going to be able to draw penalties, take some occasionally, but does that by towing the line of knowing where that line is and getting in guys' faces a little bit.
Yeah. And I don't know, like I this year obviously the points are reflecting, so like fair enough, but like I think it'll be fine. Like I'm not worried about Hartman's contract for what he brings to the team. But like I mean obviously you want to see more points this year. It's just like I said, it's almost fluky that like just there's so many good chances and so many good opportunities and just hasn't worked for him this year.
Yeah. A couple other like smaller deals. One of the kind of the big headlines right at the buzzer. The Florida Panthers get Brad Marchand from the Bruins as part of their gutting. Like I think a lot of people are kind of like, are the Bruins going to sell? Are they not? And
hey, the last piece of the 2011 Stanley Cup team. So as a Vancouver Canucks fan, I can actually sleep at night now.
Yeah. So the weird thing
Brett's
about
like, shut up, you should know.
The weird thing about this for me is it sounds like the Bruins tried to extend him, and it was like a pretty lowball offer. Like I think I read somewhere it's like a 2
he
by
wanted
3
he
million.
wanted to stay there. He wanted to stay
Yeah.
there.
So and then like I believe had a full no move clause, and just I thought it was funny that Florida was the team he put on that list. Obviously, like his goal is probably to win another cup, and he's looking at defending champions, teams who have played well, but. Nonetheless, like to see like a guy who's been such a rival of that team get traded there.
He even talked about that. I don't know if it was today or yesterday in his media.
Yeah, and I've still been using like we and us a lot when referring to the Bruins. So,
I mean, when you've been there that long, right?
Yeah, 100%. But again, a good pickup for the Panthers. Like definitely a guy they can put in their middle 6 that has the playoff pedigree that you want in a deadline acquisition, and they give up either a second or potentially a first. So we'll see. What
Dude, you got Matty Tkachuk, you got friggin' Sam Bennett and Marsh on your team. Jeez, dude, that is a rat-filled Florida Panthers team, which is fitting given the rubber rats, being thrown on the ice as the ritual.
Yep. Canada's team, the Toronto Maple Leafs.
They are not Canada's team. I about puked there.
Made their big acquisition, went out and got Scott Laughton from Philadelphia for a first.
What an acquisition!
So, like, again, this, like, I think we talked about this last week about, like, just like sellers should be selling, because Scott Laughton is kind of like maybe a slightly better version of Freddie Gaudreau. Like, Freddie Gaudreau with a little more size and maybe a little bit
speed,
but like,
I would say probably.
But like pretty similar type of players, netting a first and a prospect. So good on the Flyers, good asset management. But the Leafs, again, like, they're a team that's, trying to get out of the first round. Their window's open, have to make the moves, and I'm guessing they probably would have liked to land one of the bigger fish, but the biggest one they could get.
The Leafs are just basically the Wild with more talent, to be honest. They just can't get out of the first round, but like they're like, there's more expectation for them than even the teams here in Minnesota in the years, at least in the past few years.
Yeah. Another one here related to the Wild, former Wild Connor Dewar, moved over to the Penguins. Obviously the Wild saw him a couple nights ago. The Kings, this is one that ties back to Vancouver a little bit.
Hey, he can score, and he scores when he joins new teams. It's like once he's on a team for a little bit, the scoring dries up. But everywhere Kuzmenko goes, like, came to Vancouver, torched his first year. Went to Calgary, torched as soon as he got traded there. So, we'll see. We'll see if it's the same here in LA. But definitely, like, just a pure goal scorer. Like, there's not much else, and just a fan favorite everywhere he goes.
Yeah. LA was the one team I was surprised that didn't look to maybe make a bigger move. I think, like, they've looked like a pretty good team to me overall, but it just felt like they kind of had an okay, but like, I was kind of waiting to see if they do a bigger splash or not. But that was kind of their move. The one that delighted me to see was that the Ottawa Senators traded for Dylan Cousins.
Wow.
Which probably means he's off the Wild's radar. Thank goodness. We talked last week about that. So if you want to go just toward the end, like the very, very end of last week's show, so if you want to hear us talk about why we didn't want that to happen, I encourage you to go listen back to that. Ottawa ships Josh Norris the other way. Two young players who have maybe underachieved a little bit relative to expectations. Don't really know why these two teams make this trade. It's kind of a weird one, but ultimately I'm just happy that the Wild can no longer be in on it.
I just think Cousins has a higher ceiling than Norris. So
yeah,
and a little bit of a bigger body as well. I don't know. People are crying on social media, being like, they traded away Kachuk's friends. Like, bro, this is pro sports. They were lucky to even be on the same team.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We talked about that one. And the last one here that I had that I thought was like somewhat notable. Vegas reacquiring Riley Smith from the New York Rangers. So I still have no idea what the hell their plan is this year and what they're trying to do. But they give up probably their remaining best prospect in Brendan Brisson and a 25 third-round pick in that deal. So Vegas has like no farm system, no picks
they got
left.
Nothing, dude.
Like I don't know
when they eventually crash, because what goes up always must come down.
Yeah.
Like look at the Penguins. They maintained their dominance for a long time. The Sharks did. Boss did. Like, it's inevitable, right? It's going to come crashing down. It's going to be very interesting to see how the fan base reacts, right? And if it's still just like a destination, like part of like going to Vegas, you go to a game because it's like the atmosphere there is insane, regardless of, the team winning or losing. Or if the fans go, you better turn this around quickly because you set the bar pretty damn high upon your, you coming into the league.
Yeah. So, yeah, they have a lot of older players too. Like Eichel's still obviously like in his prime, but like Stone's getting older, like Petrangelo's getting older, Theodore's getting older. Like the core pieces are still there. Like they probably still got a couple of good years left. But yeah, to your point, like 3-4 years, this could be a very, this could be a bottom feeder team quickly with a long way forward. But hey, it's the risk you got to take.
Andrew with the best comment so far. Buffalo can't play hockey. True. For some reason, Andrew, doesn't matter how much talent they have on the team, they just cannot play hockey.
Yeah, there was, I think the Athletic did like their player survey and like Buffalo got some huge strays. It was like, who's a team you would like always include in no trade list? And someone's like Buffalo. All they do is lose. Oh. I was like, geez.
I mean, and you know what? Like
it's not wrong.
But it's not wrong, but like I don't even have the answer for it anymore because like they rebuilt with some solid fucking players, dude.
Yeah, I mean,
it's
at the blue
insane
line.
From Dahlin to Eichel to like just the list goes down even the last couple years. And it's just like they just can't. It really is like Edmonton in like 2000, we'll say like 2008 to whatever it was, until McDavid showed up, right? Like that's what it feels like. It's like you can have Eberle, Hall, Nuge all in the same line. You got Dubnyk when he was young, Petrie, and it just doesn't work. I mean, God, what was his name? Not Puljujärvi, but Puljujärvi or something. Oh fuck, I can't remember his name. I don't know. There's another young guy there who had like a good breakout year, and then just like crashed and burned after his love. Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. Any other trades that you wanted to talk about at all? Those are kind of the ones I think we got. All the ones I could think of.
No, I think one sneaky good one was where am I now? I just scrolled past it. I think Anthony Beauvillier going to Washington is like sneaky good depth move. They gave around a second round pick. It doesn't matter. Yeah. They're hoping to actually like make some noise. And honestly, with how surprisingly and like sneaky really good they've played this season, like they could be like a dark horse to make some noise. I think everyone's just like, oh, they're just it's Washington. They score goals. They're just gonna win season games, and as soon as they get to the playoffs, I mean, we've seen the same song and dance before. It might be different this year. So I just like that. It's a small little move to help them depth wise. So I like that.
Kind of similar to Winnipeg, right? Like don't fix what isn't broken. I think the other thing too that's with Washington, like they are riding a very high like PDO high right now, where they're getting some pretty fortunate puck luck, both ends of the ice, both offensively and defensively. Pucks.
Well, I just think it's the vibe of like Ovi 9 away from breaking Gretzky.
Right.
Like, how can that not be like something to motivate the players, even like subconsciously, right?
Yeah, and like I don't think this is like a minute expecting this to last for a while. Like,
well, what? I'll argue that it's gonna last because it came out today actually that Ovi's only planning to play one more season. And then he's going to play one year in Russia, like we talked about. I don't know if it was on the podcast or just when we were hanging out last week. So I think potentially next year could have similar vibes to this year because he broke the record, but it's his farewell tour, and the boys are going to want him to win for his farewell tour, maybe go on one last little run. So I could see this going until he's gone, and then it just then the high fading. But that's not without highs and lows next year. But like, I really think like this is something that like not only just the player, but like the whole franchise is playing for. And I don't think it's going to end with him just beating the record. I think next year on his farewell tour, it's going to be something special too. Yeah,
but I think that their expectations are realistic in that like they don't truly believe like obviously they're having a really good year this year, but like I think the expectation is for them to be
they didn't push all the league. They didn't go full Colorado, and that's fine because they don't really have the assets to to trade away anyways to acquire the big pieces. They kind of have to work with what they got. But that freaking is he that Belarusian, that young guy on the team? He is
Protas,
bro. I finally like watched him like play a lot. I think it was like 2 full games, and I was like, oh my god, not just highlights. And I was like, dude, like, who is this guy?
It's kind of out of nowhere. Yeah. And then like,
I mean, leave it to the Capitals for finding guys in that region, right? Yeah, it's like Russians, Belarusians, and friggin' I don't think they brought any like Uzbekistanis yet, but I'm sure there's one in the pipeline coming.
It's like the second coming of Alexander Semin, just like this guy out of nowhere, couple of good years, and then we'll fade into obscurity again.
Yeah, I will say Alex Semin, if he had any work ethic at all, probably could have been the most talented player we've seen in that decade. I mean, so many people said
he was one of my favorite players.
More talented than Sidney Crosby, 0 IQ and work ethic.
Yeah, I had like a jersey of like Alexander Semin because I loved watching him play. Like he was one of my favorite players. And then
I loved Semin as well. I don't know if they have Protas brother, but if they do, damn dude, that's wild.
Yeah, everyone else missed out. Couple other things around the league. Probably the biggest news out of this week, like aside from deadline deals and extensions, was
as a fight fan, I love this. By the way, this is we don't see this enough in hockey, in my opinion.
Aaron Ekblad got suspended for 20 games for a PED violation. First NHL player suspended for PEDs since Nate Schmidt in 2018. Which that puts him out for the rest of the regular season plus 2 playoff games. If I mapped it out correct, his statement here on screen for those listening, I will read it for you. As the NHL announced, I have been suspended for violating the NHL and NHLPA's performance-enhancing substances program. The news that I'd failed a random drug test was a shock. Ultimately, I made a mistake by taking something to help me recover from recent injuries without first checking with proper medical and team personnel. I've let my teammates, the Panthers organization, and our great fans down. For that, I'm truly sorry. I've accepted responsibility for my mistake and will be fully prepared to return once the suspension is over. I have learned a hard lesson and cannot wait to be back with my teammates.
All right, so after the first paragraph, this tells me that it wasn't a tainted supplement. It wasn't like he was just taking the same thing and one batch was tainted. This was like, okay, I'm going to do some extra EPO because that's what you do to recover. And in my opinion, most professional athletes should be allowed at least, like, I'm not talking like TRT days of like the UFC, circa 2008. I'm talking like enough to help heal, right? Because you see all these athletes will, get out of their testing program, fighters and even, football players and soccer players, when they're out of their quote unquote testing pool recovering, like there's a lot of stuff that they can use in certain amount of, in certain doses and things like that. And if these guys want to play longer, especially in a sport and heal quicker without going under the knife all the time, I feel like there should be more research and some more, allowance when it comes to these type of performance, not even performance enhancers, because it's like the only performance it's enhancing is your ability to recover. It's not going to necessarily help your ability in game. It's to help recover injuries, especially bone breaks, right? So anyways, just wanted to throw my 2 cents there.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me is like this was probably a known thing for him, and like to not run it by your medical staff or team personnel was interesting to me. Like, especially like I'm pretty sure that guy's the captain of that team, been there his whole career. Like you would think that he would want to maybe share that information. So the fact that he didn't, like, I don't know.
There's some red flags there too. I'm not saying this to defend him. I'm just saying, like, I think, especially in hockey, like lacrosse, fighting, like for, there should be an exemption for certain types of like EPO usage to recover. But again, this doesn't seem like a tainted supplement. And what you just presented, it was like, okay, maybe looking for some sort of, maybe not even competitive edge, just like he knew that this was banned, but knew that it worked. So just wanted to kind of hide under the radar.
Yeah. So I think like the interesting thing for him now is like he's a unrestricted free agent after the season. So like, I don't think it's gonna like necessarily cost him his next job, but like probably cost himself a couple $1 million. Like,
for
sure. By making that, because now I think like teams look at me more as a risk. And then last, like kind of a little bit of news here that I wanted to get to. I won't spend too long on it, but Nathan MacKinnon on the game before played the Wild hits the 1,000 point mark. I think they said the next closest in his draft class is Barkov, and he's at like 771 or something. So pretty impressive. Like I think there's debate often on who the best player in the league is. Like Connor McDavid usually wins it out, but I think Nathan MacKinnon it is and should be considered right in that conversation.
I would say that Nathan MacKinnon is more well-rounded of a hockey player, right? Mm-hmm. Whereas the high-end skills that McDavid has are just like better than anybody's, even McKinnon's, who is well-rounded, but having said that, McKinnon's speed is like incredibly underrated, man. Like this guy can go. So yeah, let me just look at this. Where there were doubts early on in his career, I know he had a great first season, then it was like 38 points, 52, 53, then boom, since 2018, he's just been flying. And 300-point seasons in a row is insane in the modern era.
Yeah, I think that's like, I always go back to this to the idea of like you have to give young players time. Like,
oh yeah,
one of the best players in the league did not. I mean, he had a really good rookie year, like 63 points, but then like,
and the team was really, really bad after that year too, right? Because these were the dark days of the Avs, which in hindsight it was only 3 years. It felt like it was a long time they were bad, right?
Yeah, getting McKinnon, Makar, and Rantanen will accelerate things quite quickly.
Yeah, and I mean they and all the other pieces in which they built those teams was good too, right? Like
and
Sakic knows what he's doing.
Yeah, and some good trades to bring guys in as well. But yeah, I think like again, like just to paint the picture of like, hey, like we see, we saw it with Rossi. Year one wasn't great. Last year, great year. This year, like kind of exploding. Not to say that Marco Rossi isn't as Nathan MacKinnon, but like it is very rare for a player to go from out of the NHL to in the NHL and being immediately amazing. So like just remember that when talking about some of these guys. So And then the last piece.
Just quickly, Hopsix, do you know, like, are players allowed to take Adderall? Not obviously, like, probably before games, but like if they're prescribed it.
I would imagine if like you'd probably have to be like literally prescribed it for something and not certain things. But
I don't think you just like willy nilly just like a little Adderall bump before a game instead of a smelling salt.
Yeah.
But, like.
And then last bit of news here, not NHL related. East Grand Forks overtime victory over St. Cloud Cathedral to take the Minnesota Class A state championship.
Love to see it. They fought hard this tournament, man, and coming back in the semifinals too.
Yeah, the game I watched them play on Friday in the semifinal against Hibbing was unbelievable. Like,
Unreal.
They were down 5-2, scored 5
I was at Lupulin
unanswered.
watching it.
Yeah, scored 5 unanswered to come back, win the game 7-5. But like what stuck out to me is like, shout out to Hibbing too, because they were just as involved as East Grand Forks. That was, I think, the most physical high school hockey I've ever watched. Like, it was like either someone scored or some dude was on his butt because he just got absolutely like run over, and that was the only two things that were happening. It was just hit after hit or goal after goal. It was super fun. But like, shout outs to them. Like, I think they came into that tournament as the 4 seed, like beat some good teams to win everything, battled through some questionable officiating late that led to Cathedral tying it, sending it to overtime. But another great, the single A tournament, even though it's these single A teams, like those semifinals and onward always deliver some really, really good games, instant classics. And I think this one ranks right in there with that.
Absolutely.
And then on the double A side, a little bit of a nail biter. Moorhead takes down Stillwater 7-6, I think was the final in that one.
I loved watching both of them play through the tournament too. So I'm like, whoever won, I would be happy. But Moorhead, man, they're not the biggest team, but man, can they skate.
Yeah, and Mason Kraft can just flip a switch and turn games on their head instantly. A 4-goal first period.
So much on Friday. Like every time I looked at the ice, I'm like, oh, he's there again.
Yeah, like you can kind of even see it late in that Friday one. Like toward the end of the game, like, oh, this guy is tired. Like he is at its wits' ends. But 4-goal first period, I think finished the tournament with 9. Had like 4-1-4, I think, which is pretty incredible. Like tied some John Mayasich records, which like those are a lot of long-standing records. Like to even tie that with the 4-goal period was pretty cool. And Stillwater, much like East Grand Forks, like battled their way back, like never got down, got it within 1 goal late, but little too late. But yeah, to your point, another just like great tournament. Moorhead, first time in their program's history that they've won a state championship.
Let's go.
Stillwater, it was their opportunity to win there first. So always cool to see some new teams in there and to have 2 public school winners. We always like that.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Another great tournament, man.
Yeah.
Like it's such a great vibe. We were able to grab a beer after it as well, so that was fun. And watching the Uber prices go down from like $100 starting.
Yeah. $140 when we left the rink to $40 when we finally got one.
Yeah.
It's a long day though.
It was
a good one.
I mean, fuck. I went. We were at Lupulin in the morning watching the games, and you were at the rink the whole day.
Yep.
I'll probably do another full day next week or next year, but
we were at Tom Reed's at 9 a.m. and then I think we pulled into our driveway in the Uber at 12:30.
One time I went, they had a breakfast poutine special, and I was like, oh my god, I love Tom Reed's.
Yeah, they just
but sometimes
had like
they have breakfast sandwiches that are pretty good too. Like they
had a breakfast sandwich. Yeah,
their tourney breakfasts are good. Gotta love Tom Reed's. Maybe Scott made them make a breakfast poutine.
That would be cool too.
I wouldn't put it past the state of hockey to make that request.
For sure. Let's get into the Wild here. We'll start off on the analytics side of things.
All right, let's get to the analytics agenda.
All right, so today I want to talk a little bit about Declan Chisholm and Jared Spurgeon, the Wild's kind of second pair right now. And just like I knew Spurgeon was playing well. I knew this pairing had been playing like pretty well. And then like today, as I was kind of working on some things for tonight, I was like, wow, these two have like actually been phenomenal. Just in the last 5 games. So basically, since Brodeen went down with that injury again, this is really cool. I think for me and my end to see this from Chisholm, who was in a little bit of a funk there, I think, kind of coming out of the Four Nations and kind of going into it. Like, he had been a healthy scratch pretty often, like was on the ice for a lot of goals against. I think we may have talked about a little bit that he was kind of getting PDO'd pretty bad and like wasn't getting a lot of saves, but scoring a lot in his minutes. And like the underlying numbers were a lot better than what the results were, but the results were the results. But these guys have averaged 15.02 of 5v5 ice time in the last 5 games. They have been on the ice for 3 goals for, 0 against, which is really, really impressive. Rocking a 70.3 expected goal share, driven by 3.17 expected goals for and 1.34 expected goals against. Like, they are the pairing that when the Wild are in the offensive zone, they are the ones out there, which like I think they're, that's something to be said about both of their skills. I think moving the puck, being able to jump in on offense. So really props there. 59.3% Corsi share. And then the one that really jumped out to me, this high danger share, 89.5%. In the last 5 games at 5-on-5, the Wild out-chancing on high danger chances 17-2 with those 2 on the ice. So just 2 high danger chances and 0 goals against in the last 5 games at 5-on-5 for these 2. And, we talked about, with these injuries that the defense would have to step up, and, there was and they have. And I think, Middleton and Faber have looked much, much better to me across the last 3-4 games. I think even compared to last week before when I had them on here about how they were struggling. So I think if there's one positive you want to find, like, I know they haven't scored a ton lately, but they've really battened down the hatches defensively in the past 5-6 games here.
Dude, and what's awesome too is, Spurgeon banged up last year, banged up to start the year, had some injury issues, and it's like when we need him the most, he's playing phenomenal hockey. So it's awesome to see.
Yeah, so I think, too, like I would think at this point, like, you have to take a little bit of a note of it as a coach. And I had someone that threw it out in a chat today asking, like, when Brodin comes back, would you keep these 2 together and put Brodin back with Faber? And, I said probably not because they like Middleton with Faber. It seems they really like that pairing. Like, they want to lean on that
and
pairing.
In the beginning of the season, it seemed amazing. It's just as of late, it hasn't been as well. So, I mean, I don't mind them continuing to put it out there because they know that, like, I mean, and they saw it last year, right? Like, they know it can be good. It's like maybe it's just going through a funk right now. So
yeah, but I thought the idea was interesting. You do keep them together. You do put Brodin with Faber, and now your final pair is it's Middleton and Bogosian, and maybe there is some a little bit of balance to be had there. You don't have to load all the minutes on one pair, but I think a healthy blue line, I think, does give you some intriguing options to mix things up if things aren't working, or if you need to shuffle things up late or what have you. So it's a good, I don't want to say problem, but it's a good to have options this time of year when and if everyone gets healthy. So that's still to be seen if Brodin comes back, he's supposed to.
By the way, Hoptics was asking if the analytics music is Wolfpack. They are a funk, or not even funk, just I guess funk band out of Los Angeles. And a big shout out to the Minnesota local Corey Wong. I actually saw him in concert, open for OAR a couple years ago, and
that was part of that charity event, right?
Yeah. A lot of the Wild. I mean, Kalen Addison was having the best time on stage. Let's just say that. And he'd already been moved. He just was like hung out with the boys all summer and went to that charity. So shout out to him.
Yeah, hell yeah. Good stuff. Now I think we have some topics and things to discuss in the Puck Your Opinions segment.
I just want to say, Puck Your Opinion.
Yeah, there's a few here.
Yeah, so I'm going to start. I actually had a couple things that I specifically wanted to talk about. Starting off with, I think, one that is right now, I think, is the more controversial side of things, and that's why I wanted to bring it up. And we didn't talk about it in the trade deadline because we were going to get to this point. But the Wild did make kind of one more move at the deadline that sent Marat, Khusnutdinov, and Jacob Lauko to the Bruins in exchange for Justin Brazeau. At the time of the trade, at the time of the trade, I was like, it's interesting, like, that they would trade Khusnutdinov, and like I was like, does this really do much? But like, now that I've had some time to think about it, like, I think the trade made sense. And I know, like, Brazeau hasn't been like astounding, eye-popping, like
Brazeau is what he is, though, right? Like, he's a bottom pairing guy who's like, if they make the playoffs, he's depth, and he's a more of a power forward type player. So like, I don't hate it. I just like Marat, and I thought that there was room for him to still develop. That's all.
Yeah, and this was kind of my thought. Like, and there's no like source you can trace this back to, just kind of my opinions and kind of what I know about Khusnutdinov. I think Lauko was an easy trade away candidate. Like they liked what he brought, but I think just
Lauko,
too much injury, a speedy fourth line winger. Like you can have a guy like a Devon Shore or Brendan Gauntz and probably
he was
fill that
expendable
role
because there's more guys and you can find another Lauko, and it wasn't like he was making up for it in offense to say like stay. And you know what? And if we're gonna be critical and fair, like Marat too, right? Like even if he had 10 goals, that could have been enough for them to be like, all right, well, like there's something there. It's just he's buried on this line and this team that cannot score, right? And again, I just loved all the other things he did, and I truly believe that like scoring would come, whether it is just 10 or 15 goals. So I personally am just biased and not as outraged as some of the people online, but it's like, damn, dude, I was gonna buy a Marat jersey.
Yeah. What I think it is for me is like I think if you're the Wild at this point, you maybe have a good feeling for where this guy tops out as a player, and I think I think that probably is a fine third line center who has some good speed and can play on the penalty kill. Well, like, do you know what kind of free agent you can sign every single goddamn summer of NHL free agency? A speedy third line center who can kill penalties. Like that player is available every year after every year. What is harder to find is one, right shots, and number two, I think big bodies. Like it's the Wild have some speed in that bottom six. There's a little bit size now when if you get Hartman in there, Foligno, Trenyan.
Well, and they need, if they're gonna play NHL playoff hockey, you need some size. I'm sorry, like you can't win that tournament like Moorhead won theirs. Like it's not gonna fly.
Right, and I think like people have really overreacted because Brezzo, he didn't. I think it was the second game he played, didn't play much, didn't look great in his first game, but like I think he flew like literally across the country, like basically overnight, like late night. He had just played the night before. Now you're in like a new team, new system, and then you fly back and you're probably trying to in the meantime go home, pack a bag, like get the stuff that you need. 'Cause I think the Bruins were on the road when he was traded. Like the human element, I think, is at play here a little bit for him. Yeah, like hasn't had much time to practice with the team. And Brett,
it's either like you get 3 goals and you're not even a goal scorer in your first game of the team, or it's exactly how it played out. I want to say one thing though, Hoptics. I agree with one of your 2 points. Perhaps there was some misunderstanding there, and some tension rose between him and Billy, and be like, "Oh, I don't want to play down here." And Billy's like, "Yo, cool your jets, we'll bring you back up." And he just kind of, and Hoppy even suggested this as well. He's like, conspiracy theory. Maybe there was some disagreement there, and then Billy was like, "All right, well, like this is how we operate here. We'll send you to Boston." So I do agree that maybe could have been the case. What I don't agree with is like I've watched enough interviews of like his parents and like just. Again, I'm a fan of Marat. I've watched probably more than the average fan content about like even when he was developing, and like he wants to be in the NHL, right? So like I don't think he's going back to Russia. I don't think there's anything more for him to prove in the KHL, nor any more money to be made right now in the KHL. So I think he's definitely going to try to. I don't see him as a guy going back to Russia unless he has to go back to Russia. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think like the upsetness is like this is a guy we gave a lot of hype as a prospect too. Like was pretty well liked by the fans. Like you always get attached to those gritty fourth line guys, like no matter who they are, whether it was Brandon Duhaime and Connor.
Who just did a lot in the community too, right? He just seemed like just a beauty.
And again, I think like is this ceiling maybe a little bit higher than what Brazeau probably is and will be? Sure, but I think it was an immediate upgrade. I mean, you're looking at a guy who had more combined points than both of these guys this year. He does give you this size. I think at some point he probably will get integrated into the second power play as kind of the net front guy because he does have some good hands. I think it was a little bit of like that long-term pain for the short-term gain, but like I don't think that pain is going to be felt very much.
No.
Again, you're trying to create spots for Danila Urov and potentially Riley Height and Liam Ogren. Like we've talked, not all these guys can play. Like you have pretty good.
That's the thing. If this team didn't have already a bunch of guys in the bottom 6, then maybe there would have been more opportunity. But
I just think what he brings is replaceable. It was kind of the way I look at it, where Brazeau gave you something maybe that you necessarily needed.
He's played more. Like he's just
he gave you something different.
And he's just more of a seasoned pro too. Like and I think they knew what they were getting from Marat, but maybe Brazeau, they're like we trust him a little bit more.
Right.
So it is what it is. Maybe someday he'll be a Vancouver Canuck and I can get that jersey. There we go.
Next one here, this one's still Wild related, and I think this has come a little bit more from maybe guys like Russo and maybe more of the media than the fans, because I think the fans have seen it, especially the ones that follow me. But I don't think Matt Boldy's playing bad hockey right now. I think he's just in a goal scoring
I've been
slump.
saying that most of the year, to be honest. Like,
yeah, which, if you've been saying it all year, like,
I mean, there were slumps,
sucks,
but like he's still like, it wasn't like he was just doing like nothing out there. He was at least throwing the body around, right? And I don't know. It's when guys are completely invisible, who are forwards. Defense, sometimes that's okay if you don't notice them, because like, hey, you're doing enough. But like, I don't know. There's only been a very few games where I truly was like, where the fuck is Boldy? Like,
Yeah, and like I had a tweet on my account earlier this week about just like how many shots on goal and stuff that he has, and like where that ranks like league wide in that span. Like, I think it's across his last like 9 games, not including last night. He was like pretty much top 15 like every single individual shooting metric except for goals. Like, all the players in front of him had scored like between like 3 and 9 goals, and he had 0. It just
helped
like,
in the shootout. Helped in the shootout the other night. So
and like the Wild,
did he ring one off the post too against Pittsburgh?
Yeah, and he's had some looks, and like I think you look at like, the goal. He doesn't have any goals. He doesn't have a goal since February 22nd. But in that span, 1, 2, 3, 4, he's got 7 assists in 8 games. Like, I don't, it's not like the offense is completely dried out for him.
And Rossi's making up for it.
Yeah,
did he hit 30?
I don't know if he's there yet, but like, and in those games too, where he hasn't scored 3 shots, 4 shots, 1 shot, 8 shots, 1 shot, 2,
20,
6,
sorry,
5.
20,
Like, he's still putting the puck on net, and I think you look at the game like last night, it's defensive play that he makes in the D's, or right at the blue line, to intercept kind of a stupid pass by the Avalanche, have the presence of mind to battle out for position, get that puck to Marco Rossi, who one touches Zuccarello, and eventually leads to a goal. Like, that play doesn't happen unless Boldy's head is on a swivel and he makes that defensive play. So I think it goes kind of beyond, the goal scoring column. Sometimes, yes, I still want Boldy to score, but like, I think it doesn't need to be treated like he's not doing anything, because I still think he's been effective in these games.
Yeah. I don't understand what everyone's deal is with a 23-year-old who's been this successful thus far and still can be better, right? Like, can still have the McKinnon factor too. Now, is he going to be Nathan McKinnon? No, but you know what I mean. Like, I don't think he's always going to be a 60-point guy. I think he's going to be 70, 80, when this team pops, right?
Yeah, and I think,
and I still think Rossi's up there as well. It was Rossi's 30th assist he hit the other night. He has 32 now and hit 21 goals to match his season highs. Like, this kid is so good. I don't understand why people want him moved.
Yeah.
Thank God he wasn't.
Yeah, it's interesting, but I
would
think
have been way more gutted if Rossi was moved than Khusnutdinov. Khusnutdinov was just like fan favorite at that point, right? Who brought like the little things. But if Rossi was moved, I would legit probably not even been able to make it to the high school hockey state tournament, because I would have downed way too many big beers, drowning my sorrows at Lupulin.
Yeah, like, to me, if he just keeps, like, I know it's frustrating, but like, if he keeps doing what he's doing, the goals are going to come for him. And I think that first line as a whole, I think that Rossi, Zuccarello, Boldy line, like, yes, they haven't scored a ton, and like the Wild as a team aren't scoring a ton, but it's like, it's not because like, it's not like, the Wild's 4th line at the beginning of the year where they're just like, there's no offensive zone time, there's no shots on goal. Like, no, it's all there. It's just they're getting goalied right now, and that won't last. Statistically, it's
look at the Vancouver game.
Yeah, like they peppered him that whole game, but the goalie has a good game, and sometimes that's what's going to happen, and sometimes it does happen 3 games in a row. But if this happened 10 times in a season, you're going to notice it. If it happens 10 times in a row, where if it happens once every 5 games, you're not really going to take much note of it. So I'm not worried. Like, I'm optimistic, actually, like the way they've defended these last couple games. Like, man, if they have that figured out again, and then the offense just slowly starts to come back, like, I feel really good about, where this team is at. So
no, absolutely.
The last one that I had that I put on here, this is just like one I've seen just increasing throughout the day from like Avs Twitter, social media, is like they were just.
I mean, Avs Twitter is awesome. Or can we just give a big shout out to Avs Twitter? Like they're the most. They're like Edmonton fans. They're really level headed.
Yes.
And
and definitely don't want the NHL to now change the overtime rules, because the Wild played a perfect OT given the situation last night. Like, I will say it was very boring to watch, but I understood why they were doing it. Like, you saw it, at the Four Nations. Like, you don't want Nathan McKinnon and Cale Makar with the puck on their stick in overtime. So the Wild solution to that was, let's just hold on to the puck the whole time and take our chances in the shootout. And it worked. Like, they scored twice, and Philip Gustafsson, who I don't know what his shootout percentage is, but I'm pretty sure he's 3 for 3 on penalty shots this year. Like, I would take my chances 1-on-0 when I know my goalie can do that. Would I like to see the Wild maybe take a couple more chances in overtime? Sure, but I understand why they did what they did, and it worked.
Yeah, it's so funny how the overtime went from like such a fun thing to now even like worse than the shootout.
Yeah, and I think both need to be like rethought a little bit. I love like the idea of like the NBA, like the over and back. Like you can't carry the puck past the red line and then carry it back in.
I'm like one of the few people who still love fights and shootouts. By the way, I'm living in the 90s.
I mean, like I think shootouts are fun. I think it's a stupid way to award points.
Just get 3 points to the winner in regulations, and you can still have fucking shootouts. Anyways. I feel like the problem could be solved so easily. And I mean, I say that, in my friggin' room here in front of a mic, in front of a webcam, talking to my buddy. We ain't no experts, but like compared to so many other things that like the league maybe, it's harder for the league to change. I mean, the point structure, it could easily be rejigged.
Yeah, perhaps we can delve into that more.
That's like summer shit.
Yeah, in the summer. Yeah. Now we'll get to a couple here that were sent in on Twitter. Thanks to those who chimed in. First one here from Hideki, friend of the show. Says, not a hot take, but proposed a who says no trade. The Wild trade Marco Rossi and then one of Zeev Buium or Brock Faber and Liam Ogren to the Sharks for Macklin Celebrini.
Bro, I mean, I inject that into my veins if it could be possible in this reality.
Yeah, like I think your values on, like I always say, like a trade's not fair until you're uncomfortable in what you're giving up. I think once you've reached that point, you're at a fair trade. I think that's how I try to overcome my homer bias a little bit when I'm thinking about this kind of stuff. But I don't see either team doing that.
Yeah.
And I think
in NHL, what are we at? 25, 26, whatever. Like that value-wise, that probably could get done. It's just like in reality, I don't think.
When I think like you look at Marco Rossi, Brock Faber, and potentially Zeev Buium, like these are three guys that are going to help the Wild right now. Would Celebrini help this team right now? Yes, but at the expense of those other players, I don't think he makes the Wild a better team at this moment in time. And the Wild are at a point where they want to be a team better than they are the day before. I think from here on out, like that has to be their goal. And I think the same thing with the Sharks. Like they know they're a little bit of ways away. They have a ton of really good prospects in place.
They're gonna be so good, and they're gonna laugh at Anaheim being like, "Ha, we know how to rebuild."
Yeah, I know.
You guys suck.
Yeah, and Mike Greer's doing a great job. I think that's who their GM is.
Dude. Yeah, dude,
so
he's done outstanding work since he took the reins there.
And from a pure vibe standpoint, like I think Celebrini is really happy in San Jose too, and I think that's important. Like I don't know,
and fans are buying tickets this year to watch him. Whereas like last year, bro, like I have
and how could you not?
Friends
who live
in
awesome.
San Jose. I have friends who live in San Jose. Their kids are huge hockey fans as well, and so like they were like, it was hard for us to like take the whole family there and spend the money. And it's not insanely expensive there, but like spend the money the whole day, get into the city and whatnot, when we knew the team was going to lose and we didn't really have much to watch. Now, like with Will Smith playing and Celebrini, it's like, all right, here we go. We got some prospects to watch, even if the game result it doesn't matter at this point.
Yeah, and I think like as an outside fan, like Celebrini is fun to watch. Like I would rather watch Celebrini play than Bedard. Like, and I don't think their teams aren't that different. They're both pretty bad teams, but like I think like Celebrini to me already has this ability, and he did it against the Wild where he can control a game kind of on his own and dictate play. Where like I haven't seen that at Bedard, those kinds of things, but like like
Brett is also one who thinks Lemieux is better than Gretzky because he just made the exact same comparison to a Bedard and a Celebrini, whereas Gretz needed other pieces.
Oh, I agree, Lemieux.
And Lemieux could just put the whole team on his back and be like, dude,
I agree with that 100%. Like, I think Lemieux is the best player of all time. Like, his numbers would look similar to Gretzky if he didn't have the injury trouble that he had. Like, I don't know how you can confidently
he came back from cancer, man.
That.
Like,
yeah, like I don't know how you can confidently disagree with that. Like, he was special.
Oh, dude, there's some people who just love Wayne Gretzky, and I think and again, it's no disrespect. He's the great one. Lemieux's the greatest one. That's what I say.
Yeah.
By the way, Hoptics, I love this. Dude, seeing the Avs fans crying about not getting the puck in OT last night was the most satisfying thing I've read in a while. Mad because we didn't hand the puck over to fucking McKinnon. So salty. The only time you complain about shootouts or 3v3 OT is when you lose them. They are fun. I agree. And some people say like, oh, it's just... I don't even know. Like, people have all sorts of complaints, but like sometimes when you see a shootout that just like ends in a stalemate and you go like 15 more rounds, dude, we are all standing on our feet. Yeah. Right. I remember I think it was like 2000, I want to say like 15, 16. The Capitals, either against Carolina or it was some other team with a red jersey.
Went to like 19 or whatever.
Dude, it was insane. Yeah. And they had to like all the TV guides were like changing to like no Capitals game and whatever shows after, like, you know, on your like cable box or whatever. It was, yeah, and it was amazing. And like I wasn't invested in that game at all, other than I was just watching hockey, eating dinner, and suddenly I'm on my feet like, let's go. Like, yeah.
I just thought it was funny that
fuck Mark Messier, Andrews.
I think the Wild, you know, they're at a point too where like, hey, they've lost a ton of games in a row now, right? And they're like, hey, we need the points, like, and we know how to get the points. It's by not letting those guys touch the puck, and we'll take our chance in the shootout. And it paid off. Like they did what they had to win and get points that to them at this time of year matter a lot. Like they were in a little bit of a slide, but now they like that 1 point and then the 2 by getting, you know, the win in the shootout. Bro, like I think gets them back into a more comfortable place.
I have, and the Hoptics is going to hate me for this, but like I have a direct example to a UFC title fight that occurred last weekend where the wrestling heavy guy sneaked out the win, making the fight boring because he was up in points. He was outstriking the guy in the first few rounds, and championship rounds we go, and he starts pinning him up against the cage, not allowing the striker to strike, and he ended up winning the title. And oh boy, is the fight community still up in arms, upset. Oh, this is stinking up the sport, whatever. Bro, don't go to SeaWorld front row and expect not to get wet, right? Yeah. If it's in the rules, people are going to find a way to win. And at the end of the day, they don't care about our entertainment as much as their paycheck.
And defense wins championships. It's a saying, but like it holds a lot of truth. Like,
shout out to Jack Lemaire. Didn't win a championship, but got as close as ever.
Let's do, these are all kind of trade ones, so we'll keep going. Next one here from Simon Vanel. He says, again, not sure how hot of a take this is, but the Wild should seriously explore Middleton's market in the offseason. Love the guy and will always be a fan, but if you can get great value for him, now feels like the time. Yeah,
I mean, sure. I'd want to see like how ready Zeev is before, though.
Yeah, like the Wild,
because he's still a pillar of this defense.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I think at like this point, you know, I think there is a little bit of concern around Brodin being injured every year, and I think to your point, like depending what the Wild believe in Zeev Buium, like maybe
they're gonna have to make room on the defense eventually. You know, if Voracek is eventually is gonna play with them down the road as well. It's just like, could this be a step backwards if they're not ready to take on the role and minutes that he's a pillar right now.
Yeah, and I think given what he's shown this year when he's been on his game, and you know his injury was a broken thumb, like it wasn't a soft tissue or those kinds of things. And I think he played. I want to say he was relatively healthy last season as well. I would lean, especially like I don't even think his contract extension is kicked in yet. It kicks in next season.
I think there's still time to move him. I don't think he's going to decline enough for like the values.
Yeah, but
change too much. But I do agree. Like the value is high on a Jake Middleton right now.
Yeah.
No ifs, ands, or buts.
I think it'd be more likely that they move Brodin than Middleton if they're moving a top 4 left shot defenseman. Yeah. That would be my gut. I would say in an ideal world they won't trade either, but if the right offer came by, I think you're right in that they would consider it. But I think the return back would probably have to be someone of his skill. Like you'd have to be getting back another, middle pair left defenseman in the process.
But then at that point, is it even worth making the trade?
Right.
And that's what I always say too. If you're moving him maybe for a forward because the defense are coming, then I get that strategy a little more. But if you're just swapping him for another similar guy, it's like, well, like, aren't you gonna have to trade that guy down the road anyways, maybe to make more room? Or, you know what I mean? So,
right. And then last one here. This one from Minnesota Wild fan 5. Selling high on Freddie Gaudreau this offseason. 29 points, 65 games, and a 2.1 for 3 more years after this season. I could see a contender wanting to have in Freddie.
Dude, I think he is a playoff team's dream player, right? Like,
yeah.
fit in with the contract, and you're gonna get a hustle from him and maybe some points as well. I'm just astonished that he's still so fast, given given his age of whatever, he's 32 or something now. But you know what I mean? Like he's been a pro hockey player for a while.
Yeah, and we
played
talked
that third line role for a while.
Yeah, and we talked a good deal about him last week and just kind of like the value and the player that him brings and how like this Freddie Gaudreau probably is the real Freddie Gaudreau and that last year is the anomaly. Like you look at like kind of his historic numbers and like it was pretty consistent. There was a dip and now it's pretty consistent again. What changed? Well, there's an injury in the dip season. So yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of one of those things that we just talked about. Like if a good offer came by, yeah, you know, maybe consider it, but like I don't think he's someone they're going to be actively shopping right now. Like I think if he's your number 4 center going into next season, behind Rossi, Urov, and Eriksson Ek, or if it's somebody else, like I think that's a great spot for him to be in. And that contract looks pretty friendly given what he's bringing you right now. But yeah, I think like it's just a hot take, no, but like I said before, I think if the right deal comes by, you maybe consider it, but I wouldn't be like, I'm not actively trying to get rid of him right now because I think he's been healthy and he has shown that he can, you know, he is a guy that in a pinch can slide up for, you know, 3 or 4 games and play in the top 6 if you need him to as well.
I love Freddie Gaudreau. I have no issues with Freddie Gaudreau.
Clip that.
Clip it. Clip it. Watch his next year completely dry up. No. If he's healthy, he's fine. He's fine. Yeah. I just love how you added this too.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that at the top.
Yeah.
So it's just like,
oh well, there you go. Good show.
I'm surprised we made it to an hour. I didn't think we were gonna get there with
I mean, the trade stuff, right? You knew we were gonna talk a little bit about each one. Player cards, you've been humming with them, guys. Go check out Brett's Twitter.
that Vancouver game, man.
Insane. Yeah, I mean, let's just like. Oh fuck! I can't. Hold on.
Oh yeah, I don't know how to do.
Twitter's just funky with it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's okay. But anyway, like just like blue everywhere. Like I think like I don't have like any for sure metrics, but like I'm, you know, when I'm usually curious, like when the Wild win, when they lose, I'll kind of like I have a spreadsheet where I track all the scores from that game or by every game, so I can more easily get like players' averages and stuff. And like so I have a game by game total, and like usually if the team has a total of like 18. Like so basically 1 PCS per player essentially. Usually it results in like a win, and then like anything less than that's usually a loss. Like I think the cumulative in the Vancouver game was like 26, and it was like 24 I think in the Boston game or Pittsburgh. It's like they played really well in those games. It's like the puck is just not going in for them. Like they can't catch a break, and I think it's gonna come. Like I'm very optimistic in the way that they're playing right now that the goals are gonna start to come.
Yeah. No, for sure. So yeah, go follow Brett, guys. And if anybody, and I know there's a lot of people who are watching on X and Twitter right now. So shout out to you guys. But yeah, go give him a follow. He's up to date with all the player cards. And if you're into this show, I imagine you at least are interested in some of the analytic side of things. And Brett does a good job pretty much every week of getting you guys a little bit more information there. If you guys want to support some of my other work, you can check out my channel. Oh, Brett, I got to be up 4 a.m. I think there's some Japanese boxing that I'm covering. This is a crazy week/weekend of me covering combat sports on my channel, ladies and gentlemen. I posted the schedule here today. Yeah, what do we got? Yeah, 4 a.m. covering some boxing. And then Thursday, we got Combate Global is back with an all-female card for free on YouTube. Then we're covering, we got a 7:30 start. Thank God for daylight savings at this point, though, because now it used to be 6:30 a.m. every Friday. At least I get another hour of sleep for some Muay Thai. Friday, also Cage Wars, also Cage for UFC. So I'll literally be streaming all day Friday, including at 3:45 a.m. for some Japanese MMA. Japanese MMA is the best. You're allowed to kick people in the face and stomp. It's real fighting. It's amazing. Highly recommend if you guys are into that stuff too. There's a Korean promotion that has the same rules called Black Combat. I'm going to be covering Deep, but I mean, if you're not into Deep or don't have a membership, I think Black Combat's a little bit cheaper. It's like a $7 pay-per-view versus $20. Totally worth it. And then Saturday? I got some Cage Warriors, some boxing, then UFC. Sunday, Korean MMA. I mean, look at all this shit I'm covering. It's going to be insane. I ain't sleeping. It's going to be a fun weekend of covering sports, guys. And somehow I'll have like the Wild game also in my little Sides. I usually just have to end up watching the Wild games, like knowing what happened, but just watching them the next day.
Yeah.
On the weekends.
I think college tournaments will be in like full swing too. I know quarterfinals for a lot last weekend, including the Gophers losing. Womp womp. But I'm still like praying to God the Mavericks can get out of their conference tournament as the winner, because I think that's the only way that they get into the tournament. So
yeah,
the Gophers will still be in, but they definitely have hurt their seeding quite a bit.
Dude, Social media was up in arms because everyone was like, they're either like, it doesn't matter, or they're like, we got this, and suddenly it mattered. Suddenly they didn't got it. So
yeah, and I'm sure Hoppy and Joe will either have already or will talk about that.
They talked, the episode dropped today, this morning, and we actually sat down for over an hour with both goaltenders who couldn't be more different. One in Alberta, over 6 foot Alberta goofy kid who loves to design his own pads and like funky pads. On the contrast, a shorter French Canadian who loves only French goalies and hates all the custom designs or whatever. So like they couldn't be more different, and it makes for such a great pairing. It was an awesome interview. I didn't ask too many questions. When I did, they were like junior hockey related since they both played junior A. But yeah, awesome interview, and that's included in the last episode as well. Video is on this YouTube channel, and the podcast is out as well. Wherever you get your podcasts, get your podcast from.
Boom.
So there you go. Hoptics, yes, pride never die. Pride is rising. Brett, last word goes to you.
Yeah, I like anything. The Wild, I think, continue their homestand, I think, tomorrow. Memory serves me correctly. Yes, against the Rangers. And then the Blues here on Saturday. Kings on Monday. Kraken on Wednesday. So we'll be either a Tuesday or a Thursday next week. Stay tuned to my Twitter for that.
And this is a big game, by the way. They got some steam.
Mm-hmm. And then Buffalo a week from Saturday. So on the middle of the homestand, coming off a big win against Colorado, and we'll see if they can, carry in and beat the Rangers, who, are we again, as we pointed out, we don't really know what they're doing.
They have JT Miller, so I hate them. I hate them even more now. All right. Great show, man.
See ya.